So I've grown up always going on holiday because that was my mum's thing. And obviously what I tried to do was go to all the places that I remember going to when we went when I was a kid. But I think one of the other things that I found when we went away, particularly to Florida, because what I noticed was it's one of those holidays that you often do with extended family. And I kept noticing like parents with their children and their parents, so obviously the grandparents. And that felt a bit sad because I thought, I'll never be able to do this, with my mum. She'll never be able to take her grandchildren away to Florida like these families are, and that felt a bit sad. You assume that grief happens when somebody dies. I did, and I didn't really think about it too much, but there's quite a clear line in the sand there. Somebody dies and then you grieve for them. What I didn't understand is this aspect of, anticipatory grief, living grief, which is really hard to get your head around because it's grieving for somebody while they are literally physically there in front of you. Because whilst she's there in physical form, like my mum as I knew her wasn't there. And it's really hard to explain because it's like there are, for a long time, there are parts of her there. So you get glimpses and then she's gone. And then there's other parts that seem to be there and then they're gone as well. Obviously now there's none of her there anymore. It is literally just like a shell. You grieve twice, right? So you've got this anticipatory grief that seems to go on and then it comes in waves and then it goes again. And then, I guess when she dies, I will grieve again. But I think it took a long time to understand for me what I was going through was a grief process. And I think it took me talking to somebody else actually through social media that said, this is living grief, what you're going through. And actually I sort of stopped and thought about it and realised that actually, that it is grief. I hadn't thought about it in that way. But it's still a loss of somebody. Okay, it's not in physical form. But you're losing them and that version that you knew of them. And that's still a grieving process. To me, I guess I always look at it, I remember when my mum was first diagnosed, and they showed us a scan of her brain. And basically you could see that there were parts of her brain that, essentially they were like black. They were missing. And so for me, that visual, I've always sort of thought of, and actually as it's progressed, it's like more and more of that brain, it disappears essentially, to the point where then, nothing makes sense anymore. And so it's been a really slow, painful journey of grief, watching somebody that you love lose themselves bit by bit by bit, really painfully, really slowly. People will just assume it's an old people's disease, and actually they're the part of the population that don't really matter. They're going to die anyway. That feels to me how the general narrative is around dementia. And I think what I've learned on this journey, obviously my mum, yes, she's not saying she's young, but she was only 70 when she was diagnosed. I'd assumed that she would have a really nice retirement, travel in the world, and obviously so would my dad. We'd all assumed that. And what I've learned is that actually it isn't just an old people's disease. People are being diagnosed with dementia in their 60s, in their 50s, in their 40s, in their 30s. And it is big. And what I struggle with is why it's so underfunded. Why we prioritise lots of different things. We prioritise cancer. We put all the money into COVID, but where's the money for dementia? Yeah.